Well, good evening one, good evening all. We are back for Danganronpa Storytime, if Part 2. For those of you who checked out the first stream, will know that this essentially is, we're going to look at an alternative reality version of Danganronpa's Trigger Happy Havoc. In the first chapter, we saw an interruption of the very first execution, and it led to Mukuro Ikusaba and Juko Enoshima parting ways. Now, this story, as I say, it's an audiobook, so we're going to be taking a much more relaxed, calm, easy stream. The chat box is open if you do want to get your comments in there, but otherwise, let's sit back and see what the rest of the story has to go. We're going to pick up, literally, where we left off. Over 10 minutes have passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks.
Alright, getting chewed up by my perspective Byakuya is making my masochistic psycho all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is very thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion, squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes.
As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Good strategy. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kirigiri saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office though. On their way to there, students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations. But if Ikusaba was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker Madarai Bishiki. So the students assumed that Bishiki had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Ikusaba on his own. With that in mind, Kirigiri turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kirigiri could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently. "Chip, looks like they've already gone," Mondo remarked. But as he was about to leave, Kirigiri spoke up behind him. "I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues."
"Huh?"
asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening.
"Clues?"
Kirigiri continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up. "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Ikusaba, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kirigiri shook her head and replied, "I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Fujisaki and I will be just in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world." You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens." Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Fujisaki cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kirigiri started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and studied it intensely. A moment later, Kirigiri was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance.
Huh?
I dragged you into this gamble of mine, so if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help.
What does that mean?
But instead of answering Fujisaki's question, Kirigiri started talking to one of the empty beds. Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety. Fujisaki looked confused. She didn't understand what Kirigiri meant at all. The ultimate question mark lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate programmer to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have voice recording function, and do you also have a microphone?
Huh? Yeah.
I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear.
But there's no one here.
As Fujisaki wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function.
I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now,
said Fujisaki nervously. Satisfied, Kirigiri nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. So what were you going to do if I told everyone that I'd found Naegi? When she heard Kirigiri say that, Fujisaki looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Naegi Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Naegi with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Fujisaki's medical knowledge. She was already surprised that Naegi had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, but Kirigiri wasn't talking to the bed that Naegi was under, which sent chills throughout Fujisaki's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kirigiri was facing. But the moment Fujisaki noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning on taking advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Fujisaki cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anyone was there. Though Fujisaki had no idea how the person was able to hide for so long, she could at least understand their strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Ikusaba Mukuro. But you pretended not to notice. Why? Ikusaba's voice was cold as ice. But Kirigiri didn't even flinch as she responded. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Fujisaki tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kirigiri's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Ikusaba seemed to come to a similar conclusion, and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Fujisaki thought she was even more terrifying. However, Ikusaba ignored Fujisaki and shifted her gaze at Kirigiri. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kirigiri thought about this simple question for a while, as if she was searching within her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kirigiri quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into the school. She could hear Fujisaki gasp behind her, but Kirigiri didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled into me. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kirigiri. But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Ikusaba's reply was completely emotionless. Kirigiri presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer was simple. Kirigiri, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls. Thank you. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kirigiri slowly raised her head and presented a theory. If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then your group, has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Tako hostage. You claimed that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that that might actually be true. The fact that Naegi called out Ikusaba's name, the things that Ikusaba confirmed and denied, Genocide Jack's outlandish claims. These key factors that Kirigiri noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible we've known Hukawa Toko for the last 2 years. What do you mean? Fujisaki cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kirigiri continued, speaking to both Fujisaki and Ikusaba. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we entered at the school. But it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope Peak Academy, and our memories that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we aren't even ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years of false memories. Though Kirigiri's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Ikusaba once again. Which means I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kirigiri's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let that silence overwhelm her. Kirigiri cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Ikusaba. I have no intention of blindly believing. what you're going to say, or what that you self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination. Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can, but I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth. Kirigiri's conviction was clear from her voice. Ikusaba's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked toward Kirigiri. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right, I completely forgot. You were like that. Ikusaba repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kirigiri and declared, That must be why Enoshima took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others. Very well, I'll tell you everything. And after Ikusaba placed Naegi back onto the bed, she began to mechanically tell a story. The story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair. A girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair herself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Ikusaba provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kirigiri had expected. And through her story, Kirigiri was able to learn the truth about herself. Who she is and why she came to the academy, the fate of the academy's real headmaster, Kirigiri's father. As she listened to Ikusaba's story, Kirigiri remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kirigiri would even believe her story. After Ikusaba finished speaking, Kirigiri stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Ikusaba's story without interrupting or dismissing it as nonsense. Ikusaba continued. You don't have to believe me. After all, any pictures that could prove my story are with Enoshima. All I can do is talk. After she said that, Ikusaba silently walked toward the entrance of the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. But even if you don't believe me, you still listened to everything I had to say. So, Kirigiri, Fujisaki, thank you. After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Naegi lay, breathing weakly. Make sure Naegi stays rested. When he wakes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please. Of course. But what are you going to do now? Asked Kirigiri. Ikusaba straightened herself up. Despair. I need to make Enoshima feel despair. Ikusaba continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. There's nothing else I can do. No, there is something you can do. Ikusaba stopped walking as Kirigiri spoke firmly. Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Enoshima Junko or Madarai Bashiki, if you're dealing with him, he won't be able to lay a finger on Naegi. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Naegi's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Madarai, who's probably abandoned him already, right? I'm sorry, I don't really work well with others. Ikusaba looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. But, I'll do my best. The doors closed, and Ikusaba was gone. I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Fujisaki. As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Ikusaba gave her, Kirigiri turned to Fujisaki, who still worked on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Fujisaki slowly looked back at Kirigiri. Kirigiri-san, about what Ikusaba said just now. Fujisaki's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kirigiri tried to calm her down. We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not. There's no need to be afraid. But Fujisaki shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop. I think she's telling the truth. What are you basing that on? Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside. Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Fujisaki's laptop, and she was analysing the data within its control system. And it was then that the ultimate programmer noticed something unusual about it. This control program. I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational. Fujisaki started trembling so much she was unable to continue speaking. We can't confirm that, said Kirigiri, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. It's possible that a similar program was being developed in secret. But Fujisaki adamantly shook her head and said, No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me. Kirigiri looked over Fujisaki's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen, and that's when she noticed. This program. Fujisaki, did you create this? All the ultimate programmer could do was nod weakly. First floor, main hall. Ikusaba continued moving forward and was fortunate enough to not encounter Mondo or Sakura. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall as large as the gym and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped up from the shadows to block her path. Within this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place. His laughter rang throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side. What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival for Naigi's affections? Or did you help play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Naigi and Kirigiri in this kind of situation together? If this were a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway. The killer was alive all along. Splat goes the blood, plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed to a final detonation. Wait, what the hell is a detonation? What does that even mean? Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma, as if she waited for him to finish speaking. Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm going to use Monokuma Evolution to become a big Magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student. As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Mukuro. So if I'm going to mold you, then I'm going to kill you first. Right as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Ikusaba like a spiked volleyball, but Ikusaba was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma just in case his claws could extend even further. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly evaded the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw...
So what does the immortal killer want, anyway? Are you going to tell the others the truth and escape with them? Even though you know what the outside world is like right now?
Two Monokumas were speaking to Ikusaba in unison.
Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-throbbing excitement.
The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound.
You said you'd destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought they'd be grateful to you. Even if you guys escape here, do you think they'll still forgive you when you get a whiff of that dusty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school. Some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't matter what they think of you. Monokuma made a little mistake.
Despite facing down two Monokumas, Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Enoshima. Ikusaba drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened into a pointed weapon. With it in hand, Ikusaba responded in a cold, mechanical tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Naegi would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Enoshima, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied,
Huh? Why?
So we can all leave together. Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Ikusaba knew their movements were intent to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Enoshima directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world. And then they'll stop doubting Naegi.
You always find new ways to disappoint me, Ikusaba. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system?
It's true the outside air is polluted, but I don't think it'll kill us immediately. Besides, it's better to be trapped in the school and forced to kill each other.
How can you be sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the others and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had even been erased. Do you really want to betray their wishes?
Ikusaba blinked and slowly strapped forward. I don't really care about their feelings.
Huh?
You're all I need, Enoshima. So don't worry. I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair. And I'm going to make Naegi and the others happy. If you want to revel in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust the hope Naegi gave me and take my chances with them instead of you. Ikusaba's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again.
Oh my! This doesn't look good at all, Monokuma, eh? This child doesn't even realize her own hypocrisy! She's so disappointing that she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma B?
The two Monokumas looked at Ikusaba, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said,
"What do you think, Monokuma C?"
Ikusaba was taken aback by their question, but her instincts kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, a third Monokuma, claws extended, passed by where her head had previously been. This new Monokuma unit landed with several spins and faced Ikusaba, who had still clung to the remains of a surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling.
"I agree with you both, A and B."
The three Monokumas lined themselves up. To the students locked inside the academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare.
"Right on!"
The three units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes looked up at Mukuro. Suddenly, they each jumped away in 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point: Ikusaba, who still clung to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But this situation wasn't even a nightmare to Ikusaba. Compared to the time she fended off 3 assassins who had invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Fenrir, this was nothing. This thought crossed Ikusaba's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Ikusaba landed and chased after one of them, brandishing her metal bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Ikusaba down with him. But thanks to her honed battlefield instincts, Ikusaba managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and the others, but she didn't hear any footsteps approach. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke.
"Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I'd disarmed the poison gas and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kimigiri and others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Naigi's with them too. I doubt Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya will torture Naigi once he wakes up. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce into his open wounds. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now."
As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Ikusaba tilted her head slightly and asked, "I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about their special police unit. Are you really okay with that?"
"No worries. Once I dealt with you, I don't care at all if they found out I was lying." "You still don't get it. You're such a disappointment."
It suddenly dawned on Ikusaba. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care about if the students found out he'd lied, but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come to take its place. But there's no way Ikusaba only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if to prove her hearing had been accurate, the Monokumas made their move. 3 bent over and began twirling their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas appeared, like after images brought to life. This second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones with only 1 frame of delay, revealing even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Ikusaba realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each.
"Did you know this is called a circle dance?"
Monokuma's 30 voices spoke in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Ikusaba already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Enoshima knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Ikusaba had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of two-toned teddy bears continued to twirl around. Ikusaba felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. But faced with this abnormal sight, the ultimate soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier in the gym when Naegi was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing through her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again.
Don't worry, I'll make sure Naegi doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. That's right. All your effort, hope, dreams, and determination are going right in the garbage heap.
The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10, as if the mastermind controlling them wanted to show off her ability to manipulate all at once. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She strained her ears to their limit and noticed a certain sound hidden among the Monokuma's voices. Ikusaba's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling-mounted turrets in front of the gate started raining down bullets on Ikusaba. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blow her away. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the hailstorm of bullets. Mukuro guessed that the mastermind programmed their movements in advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran for the gates, evading wave upon wave and claws every step of the way. Programming 30 Monokumas and 2 turrets while also predicting Ikusaba's escape route. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Ikusaba knew it was possible for Enoshima. As ultimate despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Her display of power was only fulfilling Ikusaba with despair. Despair. The scene playing out in front of Ikusaba was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all for Ikusaba. But in the presence of such despair, Ikusaba felt a strange serenity. For me, Enoshima's doing all this. For me. Enoshima, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro, Ikusaba, really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Enoshima, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Ikusaba fell completely silent. As a member of ultimate despair, Ikusaba's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turrets seemed to stop for a heartbeat. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and the void being picked up by the sensors spread through the school, with Ikusaba at the centre. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder, As this coldness spread into her heart, it began to beat in a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Ikusaba's body and mind melded together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. Despair, bullets, and Monokumas filled the area. Ikusaba predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped to her, but she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Ikusaba previously occupied, striking the falling Monokuma right through its internal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Ikusaba balanced herself in midair as she kicked away 3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully, she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the path of oncoming bullets, exploding one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but their blast didn't even leave a scratch. With full control over the entrance hall, Ikusaba evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma were not enough to destroy the door. But she refused to stop. Ikusaba needed to get information on what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Enoshima. Ikusaba wanted to fill Enoshima with despair by instilling hope into the future of Naegi and the other students. That was Ikusaba's ultimate goal: get information. In contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Ikusaba was not currently speaking to Enoshima. This situation, this battlefield of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts for Ikusaba. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Ikusaba needed to be was a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. That purpose alone was the crux of her existence, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Ikusaba. A battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Enoshima would berate her sister, Ikusaba couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologise profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Enoshima was using a language her sister actually recognised. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. Ikusaba's heart was filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Enoshima, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Ikusaba continued. Her endless rounds of despair fired from the school's turrets, but Ikusaba's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realised that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many she destroyed. Not only that, she noticed that more Monokumas had joined the fray until there were nearly 50 of them for her to fight. But Ikusaba's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Enoshima, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Ikusaba, who had no interest in this world, this small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance.
She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair, which accompanies the music of hope. Computer room's innermost area, Monokuma room. How much time had passed? The surveillance cameras at the gates captured footage of countless Monokumas falling at the hands of a child who fought like a raging demon. The Monokumas boasted their numbers, and now 100 of them were trying to sink their claws into Ikusaba. Most ran on autopilot, reacting to her movements based on prior information they had received in advance. But despite standing before hundreds of mechanical adversaries, Ikusaba's face showed no fear. She hadn't sustained a single injury, giving her a presence that was nearly divine to behold. Though Agami Sakura was powerful enough to injure her arm, Ikusaba, in her current state, could potentially fight Agami to a draw now without relying on firearms. She took complete control of the battlefield, taking in her surroundings as if they were a part of herself. She dodged attacks from the rear as though she had eyes in the back of her head and stabbed through Monokuma's weak points with her metal bar. No matter where the attacks came from, Ikusaba deflected them all as if her skin were covered in eyes. Describing her as ultimate no longer did her justice. Ikusaba had transcended the boundaries of humanity and become a pure killing machine. But despite that, even though she understood the ludicrous power her sister possessed, Enoshima was not afraid. She felt not one iota of fear. After all Enoshima can feel is despair. She even started to admire her sister's attempt to fill her with despair, but that sentiment quickly filled Enoshima with an orgasmic ecstasy of despair. Enoshima knew. She knew that Ikusaba was neither hope nor despair. She was just a phenomenon. A disappointing girl who no longer understood herself, who only knew how to be violent because it was all she could believe in. Ikusaba had become an avatar of destruction beyond that of any military force. She couldn't even be considered a soldier anymore. She was a natural disaster, like a typhoon or a tornado, or perhaps, like gravity, she was now a fundamental force of the universe that only existed to bring despair to Enoshima. The mastermind enjoyed watching her sister go all out. If Ikusaba destroyed everything and ruined her life, Enoshima would still be comforted by the despair. She could just go right ahead and overpower her. Enoshima considered this for a few seconds until a familiar, hopeless habit reared its head. Her habit of getting so bored that it made her sick. The girl who had been grinning as she watched the screen now bore a look of calm stoicism, and she reached for the microphone that connected to Monokuma's speakers. Ikusaba was no longer human anymore, but Enoshima knew how to bring her back. It was a simple feeling, really, and with that hopeless feeling for Ikusaba in mind, the mastermind said just one word. Ikusaba. Ikusaba. That voice. It called her name. Instead of using Monokuma's voice filter, Enoshima's natural voice was coming out of the Monokuma unit. That's all it took. With one word, Ikusaba Mukuro stopped being a force of nature and became a person again. Monokuma would not miss this opportunity. As if moving to the beat of Ikusaba's shaking heart, a torrent of claws leapt to attack her. But Ikusaba trusted her instincts and twisted her entire body to fend off the attacks, leaving her with only a few scrapes here and there. But the despair wasn't over yet. The ultimate despair didn't waste any time making her next move. Mukuro, watch out! Huh? As soon as Ikusaba heard that voice, her mind went completely blank.
There was no mistaking it. That was Naigi's scream. The scream that saved her from the spears of Gungnir and changed her destiny.
Sonny, where'd you go?
It took her a tenth of a second to realise that voice was just a sound clip that Junko had replayed. It was more than enough time to drag Mukuro, who had drained her humanity, into despair. Right when she recovered from a moment of shock, Monokuma appeared from behind her and roundhouse kicked her in the temple. She twisted her head to roll with the blow, but at that moment, a different Monokuma attacked her from the opposite side of the headbutt, and as soon as Mukuro dodged that attack, 3 Monokumas launched simultaneous drop kicks and knocked her to the ground. Ugh! The fact that they weren't using their claws meant they weren't trying to kill Ikusaba right away. Before she could stand up again, dozens of Monokumas waiting for her on the floor climbed on top of Ikusaba and pinned her limbs. One of the Monokumas waddled over to Ikusaba as she lay face down on the floor and laughed.
A pretty girl getting pinned by all these me's. I wonder if I should feel more excited about this. Don't make that face. If I wanted to kill you, I'd just pump you full of bullets right now. But I don't think the audience watching this on TV would like that ending very much. I need to make sure I do it the right way this time. What are you planning to do to me?
Ikusaba asked her in an emotionless voice. Monokuma guffawed and answered,
Nothing. I'm just going to stick to the original plan and make you play the killing game at the school. I'll erase everyone's memories again, and I'll just make them redo the introduction and the entrance ceremony again.
In typical Monokuma fashion, he leaned his face towards Mukuro.
But it'd be boring if we had to redo everything. Maybe this time, I'll have you participate as Ikusaba Mukuro. I'll take away even more of your memories, like I did to that irritating detective girl. You'll just be a poor little girl with no memory at all.
As Monokuma talked and wiggled his body from side to side, the other Monokumas danced and twirled around. Amid this fantastical scene, Monokuma continued to describe his hopeless plan in a nonchalant manner.
At first, you'll be the girl with amnesia, and everyone will feel sorry for you. But as they unravel the mystery of this academy, they'll find out who you really are. It's exciting to think how they'll treat you when that happens. Knowing you, you'll probably kill someone purely on instinct. Maybe I should rethink my rules about self-defense.
You can't. Her memories would be erased. There was nothing she could do about her classmates hating her, but losing even her child memories would mean even her connection to Enoshima would be severed. Even if Ikusaba had no interest in the world, that was unbearable even for her.
I've heard of New Game Plus before, but this is the first time I'll get to see a New Game Minus. Should I tie you up for fun? Or maybe we should make this game even more masochistic. Forget hard mode, very hard mode, and Inferno mode. Want to just skip ahead to Impossible mode? Maybe I'll erase your memories after I drag you on a motorcycle, pummel you with 1,000 baseballs, burn you at the stake, and crush you with an excavator.
Mukuro knew what Monokuma was talking about. He was describing the tools they had prepared for various executions they planned for the students.
After everyone reintroduces themselves, they'll walk around the school grounds and eventually find a flat-chested girl with amnesia, covered in bandages with Fenrir's tattoo on her right hand. I bet a certain fanbase might get off on that. If this were a game, that would increase sales by 500%.
Though Monokuma sounded like he was joking, everything he said was deadly serious. As evidence, Ikusaba heard a rumbling sound off in the distance.
Now then, your sweet ride is on its way.
Based on the engine's noise, Ikusaba surmised that it was the large motorcycle that was supposed to be used for one of the executions.
I took the time to bring this all the way from the punishment room, so you better be grateful.
The sound of the roaring engine grew louder and louder, like the approaching footsteps of death. Ikusaba wondered how Monokuma would drive it with such tiny arms and legs, but then she remembered she was dealing with an ultimate despair. Inoshima would make the impossible possible just to bring about despair. A despair that went hand in hand with Ikusaba's fate. Did I fail? I couldn't fill Inoshima with despair? I couldn't save Mukuro and the others? Question raced through Ikusaba's mind, but she wasn't able to answer them. There was no way she could have answered them so easily. After all, she was still alive. The sound of the motorcycle grew closer and closer, as if it was threatening to break Ikusaba's spirit. Suddenly, Monokuma stopped moving. The other Monokumas continued doing their automatic movements. As the strange event unfolded, Ikusaba noticed something. The motorcycle had suddenly gone quiet. After a few seconds, the engine exploded to life and began to approach even faster than before. Only a few seconds later, what appeared in front of the main entrance was an enormous motorcycle that ploughed through groups of Monokumas like a predator hunting its prey. The rider of this motorcycle was none other than Owada Mondo. Ikusaba and Monokuma were both visibly shocked by this turn of events. Instead of addressing them, Owada accelerated the motorcycle he stole from Monokuma directly towards Ikusaba. Just before his front tyre touched her, he popped a reverse wheelie and turned the entire motorcycle around. The back wheel swept over Ikusaba's back, knocking away all the Monokumas that were pinning her. "Hey, can you stand?" Owada asked and begrudgingly offered his hand to Ikusaba. Confused, she took his hand and stood up. "What are you doing here, Owada? I was so close!" One of the Monokumas protested, not in his normal voice, but as the hacker, Madarai Bashiki. "Oh yeah, you're Bashiki or whatever, right?" "That's right, why are you helping a terrorist?" "I ain't bragging about this or anything, but I have no clue if you or this girl is lying." The veins in his temple began to bulge, and his cheeks flushed with anger as Owada said, "But still, I ain't the type to just stand around while some idiot gangs up on a girl." "What are you saying? Get a hold of yourself! You must be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome! You deluded yourself into thinking you're friends with the criminal who's taken you hostage!" Monokuma tried to explain to Mondo, but he ignored him. Took Ikusaba's hand and pulled her onto the back of the motorcycle. "Ah, shut the fuck up! I know nothing about Stockholms or syndromes, but don't go acting like you can boss me around." As Owada shouted, he revved the motorcycle as if using it to punctuate his words. The ceiling-mounted turrets began moving, but the two disappeared before the turrets could take aim at the motorcycle. As Owada shouted, he revved the motorcycle as they zoomed through the hallway. Countless Monokumas chased after them, waving their claws wildly through the air. Yeah, for some reason the passage repeated then. I do apologise for that mistake. "Why?" asked Ikusaba. "Huh?" shouted Owada. His voice was even louder than the sound of the engine. "Don't get the wrong idea. I don't trust you at all." He lowered his voice slightly, as if he whispered to himself. "But still, I don't know why I felt I could trust what he said." "He?" inquired Ikusaba, but there was no time for questions. The unit leading the Monokumas chasing after the motorcycle had almost caught up to them, and then, like the enormous maw of some fearsome creature, they brandished their claws in perfect unison. At that moment, the motorcycle zoomed by a certain girl, a girl whose fighting ability surpasses that of any normal human, the strongest girl on Earth. With a fighting spirit that defied comprehension, the ultimate martial artist kicked off the floor. A sound even louder than the motorcycle's engine filled the room. When Ikusaba looked back, she saw Sakura land on the floor, sending the pack of Monokumas flying several meters away. "Sakura!" As she heard Mukuro mumble her name, Sakura didn't acknowledge it. Like a statue of fearsome God King, she calmed her breathing as she stood before the pack of Monokumas, ready for battle. "Your pursuit methods seem unbecoming for someone who claims to be the ultimate hacker." An overpowering aura seeped from her skin. and shimmered as an intense heat began to fill the hallway. Unlike the power of Ikusaba's sheer violence, this was the power of martial arts. Ikusaba froze the air around her and time along with it, but Sakura generated enough heat to boil the space itself as she stood before the Monokumas. With that heat stinging her back, Ikusaba looked ahead. Yamada and Chihiro cautiously peeked from behind the door leading to the dorms, while Asahina and Taka kept watch from inside the building. After passing them by, Owada slowed down the motorcycle as he reached the front of the cafeteria and turned into a complete stop. The other students looked warily at Ikusaba, but among these students, Ikusaba noticed two people who didn't regard her with suspicion. One was Kirigiri, who seemed to study the situation. The other was a skinny boy who leaned against Kirigiri's shoulder. Naegi? Ikusaba's limbs began to tremble as she sat on the back of the motorcycle. Ignoring the pain coursing through his body, Naegi smiled at Ikusaba and repeated what he said to her earlier. I'm glad you see, Ikusaba. Unfortunately, Ikusaba was unable to realise her hope of filling her sister with the star. Instead, she had successfully planted the seeds of hope into her fellow students. Naegi had barely regained consciousness while Ikusaba fought the horde of Monokumas at the main entrance. When he woke, he did something extremely simple. He talked about his memories. Most of the students were still skeptical, even after listening to Mukuro's recorded confession. Obviously, they were still not entirely convinced when Naegi woke up, but after Sakura asked a certain question, the ambience completely changed. Then beyond the walls of this school, the world is completely destroyed. You're saying there's no one else alive? Naegi slowly sat up to answer Sakura's meek question. Don't worry, I'm sure Kenichiro is still safe. I'm sure he'll still keep his promise to you, Sakura gasped. Kenichiro was the only man she couldn't defeat, a man who had promised her a rematch, and made her one other promise as well. How do you know that name? How do you know about that promise? Because you told me. No. Naegi slowly corrected himself. You told all of us. Sakura was silent after hearing those words, but she then faced the other students and spoke in a loud, clear voice. I'm going to trust Makoto. Sakura? Though Asahina was shocked, Sakura continued to speak with determination. What Makoto just said is something I kept locked away inside my memories. In fact, I was planning to keep that a secret until the day I died. But if I shared that secret, that means there was once a strong bond between Naegi, myself, and my fellow students as well. Makoto continued to talk in a gentle tone. Though it couldn't have been good for his health, he continued to slowly talk about the memories that the other students no longer had. What do you know about the story I'm planning to write? Are you a specialist user who can predict the future? You already finished that story, Hifumi. You had me help you with inking. What? Wait a sec! How do you know I extorted money from that girl related to the Kazuryu clan? Because you even tried to sell my organs to them. His wounds were excruciating, but even so, Naegi kept smiling and talked about their lives together, as if it was his duty to do so now that he had regained his memories. As the other students listened to him, they slowly began to realise something. The vivid accounts he provided couldn't be explained as just passing knowledge. Clearly, some kind of bond between them all had been erased. Only Byakuya remained cynical. There's no way I would have grown closer to any of you. It's likely that you're all secretly working together. Though Byakuya was still hostile towards Naegi's recollection of their memories, for the time being, he determined that Naegi wasn't actually a terrorist. Ikusaba had bought enough time for Naegi to wake up and share his memories with the others. Even if she hadn't intended to do that, there was still a small sliver of hope that she grasped tightly. And now, as she looked at the boy who had smiled at her, Ikusaba didn't know what to say. She couldn't think of anything to say at all. The battle was over, and Ikusaba was now back to being a disappointing girl. She turned away from everyone's faces and apologetically climbed off the back of the motorcycle. But Naegi saw her and slowly opened his mouth to say, "Thank you, Ikusaba. You saved my life." Naegi gave her words of sincere gratitude between his weak breaths. Ikusaba couldn't bring herself to look at himself as she mumbled to herself, "Why? Huh? If Kirigiri told you, then you already know what I did, right?" After regaining his memories and learning the truth, Ikusaba should have been nothing but a hated traitor to him. Why would he smile at someone like her? Ikusaba kept her head down. Naegi smiled, as if he was unsure how to respond, and said, "Well, I guess you're right, but you also saved my life many times during these past 2 years." And Naegi took a deep, quiet breath and smiled at Ikusaba again. "You're my friend. We all spent time together with each other. It would be great if you could look for a different path, not despair. And if there's any way I can help you, I will." "Do you really think I can walk another path at this point?" "I don't know what you can do, or even what I can do. But I think it's more important to actually look for that, instead of actually finding it." Was this intentional or a coincidence? Just before he regained his memories, Naegi had said something similar to Ikusaba when she spoke to him in the nurse's office as an Oshima. Regardless of whether he lost his memories or regained them, these words revealed Naegi's true character. As Ikusaba confirmed that to herself, Naegi blurted out something that was almost too trusting. "And it's not just you, even an Oshima can." But he was immediately interrupted. Monokuma's face appeared on every monitor in the academy, and his laughter seemed to come out of every speaker.
"I could have kept pretending to be that ultimate hacker, but it's boring to impersonate someone who doesn't even exist. If this keeps up, I'll lose my identity and turn to Konokuma."
Kirigiri looked up at a surveillance camera and addressed Monokuma directly. "You seem to give up pretty easily."
"There isn't a bear anywhere that gives up as easily as I do. Regardless, I'm pretty sure Furutisaki has figured out the secret of my control program now."
"So just as I thought, you included that program on purpose." Kirigiri realized something when Ikusaba told her about Enoshima. There were 2 reasons such a hateful person would intentionally leave an obvious clue inside the Monokuma units. Either Enoshima wanted the students to learn the truth about the outside world and themselves on their own, turning their hopes into despair, or she looked forward to that clue resulting in her own plan being undone, which would allow her to feel despair towards herself. She was an angel of everlasting darkness, delighting in her own despair and using it to spread despair and destruction to those around her. Why would someone like that continue to play the role of Monokuma?
"Actually, I set that program for Chihiro to discover she happened to be one of the final 5 survivors. I feel so sad and empty that my preparation was a waste, but I'm going to think about it positively. The word retreat doesn't exist in Monokuma's dictionary."
Nervousness began to grip the students as Monokuma continued talking in his relaxing, uplifting voice.
Now then, it looks like everyone's here, including Hukawa, who's still tied up in her room. So let's start the heart-throbbing, exciting special graduation exam! Huh? The students broke out in noisy confusion, but Monokuma ignored them and kept talking. Don't think about it too hard. Relax. Change relax to a pert for all I care. I'll still be the most adorable bear here. Byakuya, visibly annoyed with Monokuma's nonsensical rambling, shouted, I already know it's you, Inoshima. Stop the stupid game and show yourself. Oh my, don't you know? If you want to lure the mastermind out of her heavenly hidey hole, you need to bring a worthy sacrifice. You're not worthy at all. Do you really think the mastermind would show herself for your pathetic hope and despair? He roared maniacally, then began to explain the special graduation exam. If you pass my exam, everyone will graduate. But if you fail, you'll be held back for a whole year. I'll reset your memories, give you a fresh new lease on life, and you'll reintroduce yourselves at the start of the school year again. They say people's lives don't come with reset buttons, but I'm not a people. Whether it's soft resets or hard resets, I can do as I please. Kagakure seemed confused by the other student, but the other students knew what Monokuma meant by reset. He was going to force them to relive their school lives once again. As Kagakure struggled to understand, Taka pointed at a nearby monitor and shouted, Stop this already! No matter what you do to us, we'll never commit murder! These past few days should have already made that clear to you! What was that? Jumped Monokuma. Are you serious? Of course! No one here would ever take another human being's life for any reason! As Taka shouted, one of the students, a pale-faced girl standing apart from the others, looked away. It was Mizuno. As she trembled, a voice popped up from behind her. What do you think, Mizuno? She couldn't even turn around from sheer terror, but Mizuno knew. She knew Monokuma was standing right behind her. Do you really think none of you will become a killer? Monokuma leaned toward Mizuno and asked her a question only she could hear. By the way, Mizuno, why did you go to Naigi's room when nothing strange had happened yet? Did you two have an inappropriate relationship? What would your fans think if they found out you made a move on a boy by sneaking into his room? Or were you there for some other reason? She could barely make a sound, much less scream, as her trembling worsened. Monokuma had nothing to gain by cornering Mizuno and toying with her emotions like this. He simply wanted to see the young singer fall into despair over her true character. And for that reason, Monokuma did not relent. Hey, what were you trying to do to your close friend you've known for the past 2 years? Her determination from last night blended with the memories Naigi had recounted and ate away at Mizuno's mind like a disease. As her mind began to rip itself apart, she fell to her knees. A clear ball, flying at just under 105 miles per hour, struck Monokuma in the mouth with enough force to sink into his face. The speaker in Monokuma's mouth was immediately destroyed as his body rolled into a wall and stopped moving. Mizuno came to her senses and looked where the ball came flying from. She saw Kawata breathing heavily as he stared intensely at Monokuma. Kagakure grabbed him and yelled, Ah, dude, why did you do that? That crystal ball is really valuable! Kawata had stolen Kagakure's crystal ball and thrown it at Monokuma. That Monokuma bastard was trying to take Mizuno hostage! What was I supposed to do? Dude, that crystal ball cost me $2 trillion! $2 trillion! They don't even print that much money anymore! Oh, bullshit! Besides, if the world's all screwed up, what the hell are you going to need money for anyway? But if it's safe out there, I'll just join the major leagues or whatever and pay you back. Well, I could pay you back doing something else besides baseball. As those two argued, Mizuno fell to her knees. Hey! Shouted Kawata, running towards her. Mizuno, are you okay? She looked at him and stared blankly. Kawata. She had made up her mind, and she raised her head as she said, there's something I need to confess to you later. What? Seriously? Mizuno stared at Leon so intensely that he briefly forgot about the current situation. Not just to you, but to Naegi and the others too. Mizuno had made up her mind to confess the sin that weighed heavily on her heart, but Kawata seemed not to hear the latter half of her remark. He ran back to the others, slapped Yamada and Kakaguri on their backs and shouted, Alright everyone, let's lace this exam or whatever, get out of here already! There's no way I'm going to let my happy memories of this place get taken away. The Monokuma inside the monitor responded, Fine! Now that things are finally coming to a boil, let's start the graduation exam! Sakura, who had been outside the dormitory, suddenly appeared with some information. The Monokumas in the hallway are acting peculiar. The students all moved to the main building to see what she talked about. There, they saw 50 Monokumas standing in 2 rows along the walls of the hallway, and one standing at the very end of the hall. There was something strange on top of this Monokuma's head. An enlarged version of the escape button that Makoto had obtained from the Mono machine. As each student took in this sight, an announcement rang throughout the school. The me at the end of the hall has a button on top of his head that'll open the main entrance. You'll have 15 seconds to get that button, and if you do, I'll let you have it in place of a diploma. The students seemed surprised by the straightforward explanation. Only Celeste remained calm, and she asked Monokuma with a bored look on her face. Of course, it's not as simple as running up and taking it, is it? Oh, how mean! Do I look like the kind of headmaster that would interfere with his students' graduation? Forget the gunfire salutes. I'm going to send my graduates off with some fireworks. 100 fireworks to be exact. Enough for 20 seconds of hardcore partying. The more perceptive students immediately realised what he talked about. The bombs installed inside each Monokuma. They would explode one after the other, filling the hallway with fire as soon as time started. After 15 seconds, the me standing at the back of the hall is going to sacrifice himself to give you guys one final firework. By the way, this probably isn't important, but that button isn't very durable. The graduation exam was Monokuma's way of saying he had no intention of letting anyone leave. It was clear from the explosion that students saw during the entrance exam that the halls of Hope's Peak Academy would be bathed in fire. Even if someone was lucky enough to survive the explosions, the burns on their body alone would be enough to send them into a fatal shock. Their lungs might be completely incinerated by the scorched air before that. Even if they sacrificed one student to run through, the odds were low that they would even succeed. But there was no reason for every student to run in at once either, and a shadow of despair fell upon their faces. Nice! I almost want to take a picture so I have those faces as a souvenir! As Monokuma laughed from behind the monitor, Sakura stepped forward. I'll do it. I have only seen the explosion once, but I believe I'm capable of withstanding its power. No! Shouted Asahina. You can't! Even if you could handle 100 of those explosions! Sakura shook her head. I'm the only one who even has a chance. Suddenly Awada remembered the motorcycling parts inside the dormitory and said, Hold up! That motorcycle might be fast enough to go through these explosions. I'll do it. Don't be hasty. Even if the motorcycle is unharmed by the explosions, that doesn't mean its rider will be. As Sakura and the others continued their debate, one person stepped toward the hallway lined with Monokumas.
I'll do it.
Ikusaba!
Screamed Naegi weakly. Ikusaba, with her back facing Naegi, turned her head to the side slightly and gave him a small nod. She knew it would come to this. She knew why Monokuma would pose such an impossible exam. Inoshima is already looking forward to the next game. She's going to erase everyone's memories, including mine. She just wants to torment us and fill us with despair before that happens. But Ikusaba knew her sister's personality all too well, and that's why she was confident. She knew that the escape button was real. Whenever Inoshima brought despair to others, she always made sure there was a possibility that despair would befall her instead. If the students won this gamble and made it through this horrible situation, they would escape to the outside world. That outcome would obviously fill Inoshima with immense despair, but in the same way she left a clue in Monokuma's control program, Inoshima could not be satisfied unless she took pains to assure her own destruction. It was this quality that made Inoshima the ultimate despair. That's why Ikusaba was determined to do it. She knew she was the only person who stood a chance of making the outcome possible, even if she had to risk her life. But right now, Ikusaba wanted to live more than anything. She wanted to hold on to this world, a world she had no interest in previously. She didn't even know if this hesitation she felt was disappointing or not. But she wanted to live and continue searching for a new path. A path where she would abandon her submission to despair, where she could accept the sins of the past and continue to live. Ikusaba, who was known as a war machine, found her heart beset by overwhelming fear and anxiety. Until now, it had never occurred to her that determination was necessary to live. As if she was brushing that fear aside, she quietly said, "Thank you, Naegi-kun." Unfortunately, the words she said to the boy, who showed her new possibilities, never reached his ears. Sakura, however, heard and frowned as she said, "If you're planning to sacrifice yourself as an act of penance, I'll stop you with all my power." Though her words were firm, there was unmistakable affection hiding in them. Both girls had dedicated their lives to battle, and yet Ikusaba felt a twinge of jealousy towards Sakura for possessing something she lacked. Ikusaba leaned towards Sakura and whispered in her ear, "What? Are you serious?" As Sakura's frown intensified, Monokuma's voice blared through the halls. "Alright, I'm gonna start the exam now! Rei, Yoi, Hashime!" There was no time for questions or objections. The frontmost Monokuma exploded, sending a roaring wave of heat through the hall, but Ikusaba didn't look away. She began moving, powered by resolute determination. Monokuma room. As soon as the graduation exam started, the mastermind focused her control entirely on the Monokuma holding the escape button and completely synchronized her field of vision with it. She knew what was going to happen next. She could predict what her sister, Ikusaba, would do in this exact situation, where she would choose to focus her superhuman skill with weaponry. And so, through Monokuma's eyes, she watched the scene unfold exactly as she had predicted. A pointed metal bar burst through the explosions, heading straight for the weak point of the Monokuma holding the escape button. Specifically, aimed for the point where the bomb's detonation system and Monokuma's power source overlapped. It flew straight and true, as if fired by a master archer. In order to bring despair to Monokuma, and by extension Inoshima as well, the super soldier known as Ikusaba Mukuro threw the pipe like a spear so he could attack the same weak point she had pierced in the nurse's office. As explosions filled the hallway until fire remained visible, the spear's speed and precision as it soared to its target defied all human logic. But the mastermind knew. She knew Ikusaba had used her power to fill the world with despair,
Power was all that disappointing girl had. But that power was useless against Monokuma. The mastermind had predicted Mukuro would put all her effort into that throw. And Monokuma caught the metal bar perfectly between his hands. The force of the throw knocked Monokuma back several yards, but the pointed end of the bar never pierced through his chest. Well, that was disappointing. The mastermind turned to look at a different monitor. She wanted to see the look on Mukuro's face when she realised that she had failed to strike Monokuma. The despair of seeing the final Monokuma explode right before her eyes, obliterating the escape button. She wanted to sear this memory of her disappointing sister's final moments as her newfound hope sank into a dark pit of despair. On instinct, she turned her attention to the surveillance camera that hadn't been destroyed. But instead of seeing Ikusaba and the others, she saw only Sakura, who looked as though she'd finished launching an attack. She only thought it was strange for 1 second, but then the hopelessly powerful mastermind completely understood the situation and shifted her point of view toward Monokuma. On the stream, Queen saying hi, good evening, back to the story. But because of that single second, Enoshima would feel just a ping of despair. 3 seconds remain. Amid the smoke, flames and heat encircling the hallway, it burst through with the speed of a cannon shell. It glared at Monokuma with hot, boiling eyes that betrayed the icy expression on its face. And then, sharply, swiftly, strongly, it transformed into a living weapon that cuts through everything, revealing its true form in that hall of despair. 2 seconds. Monokuma, who still held the metal bar in his hands, tried to move, but at an exact moment, the living weapon carved a path through the flames and appeared before him. Its body, which had never been wounded on any battlefield, sustained all manner of burns and injuries, but even so, it did not falter. The fire in its eyes never flickered once. 1 second, final second. The living weapon, Ikusaba, slammed her knee into the back of the metal bar Monokuma held. The sharp tip pierced through Monokuma like a rail spike, shredding the detonator and his power source into pieces. Time's up. The 100 explosions cease and smoke blanketed the hallway. Ikusaba had dived into Monokuma and the pristine escape button now rested in her hand. She and the other students of Hope's Peak Academy had passed the graduation exam. It was only a small amount of despair. Monokuma had tasted it in only 3 seconds. Hallway, first floor. Enoshima. Ikusaba looked down at Monokuma. He could no longer move or self-destruct. When she spoke to him, a static-filled voice emitted from his mouth. It seemed his communication function still worked.
I never expected you to do that.
He still sounded like Monokuma. It seems his voice modulator was unharmed as well.
I must have overestimated you. I never thought you'd need anyone's help on the battlefield.
When I get the signal, please launch me forward with a roundhouse kick. Ikusaba whispered these words to Sakura just before the explosion started. After Ikusaba threw the metal bar, she jumped into the air at the exact moment Sakura unleashed a roundhouse kick. Right when Sakura's foot made contact with her own, Ikusaba used the force generated to propel herself at Monokuma. Using the ultimate martial artist's superhuman attack like a springboard, she shot herself through the air like an artillery shell. I don't know why we're being told this again, we've already seen this in the last description. Call it filler item.
Enduring intense heat, shrapnel and blood-draining G-force, she stayed conscious as she charged through the hallway, engulfed with explosions and despair. Ikusaba trusted Enoshima. She trusted Enoshima to predict that she'd throw the metal bar and catch it accordingly. Then she tried to look at her face as despair sets in. The Enoshima Junko she knew would definitely do that. Although Ikusaba hadn't predicted that her sister would try to kill her with the spears of Gungnir, she had a better understanding of her actions now. As Ikusaba stared Monokuma in his face, all he could do was laugh scornfully.
You put your life in someone else's hands for a deadly battle. I don't know how I feel about that. You'll always be a half-assed disappointment. I guess this time I'll just say I lost because I didn't see this much disappointment coming. Switch POV as Dance from Queen? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. The end. The end.
Ikusaba shook her head at Monokuma. No, you're wrong, Enoshima.
Huh?
If you want to talk about winning or losing, I think we lost before we even started. Ikusaba's eyes shifted from side to side, as if she was unsure of something, and she fidgeted in place as she continued to talk. No matter how much despair they felt, you didn't think they'd kill each other the way they were before. That's why you erased their memories. They aren't like the others you forced in the past. You knew these students would never do it. That's what you believed, isn't it?
What are you talking about?
So, it's okay, Enoshima. I'll bring back everyone's memories someday and I'll show you everyone's happiness and their bonds. I'll show all that to you and fill you with even more despair. Ikusaba nodded after she said this, as if to cheer her sister up. After several seconds of silence, Monokuma responded.
You finally beat me this one time, and that lame speech is the best you can do? You're such a disappointment. You'll never fill me with despair. It's just constant disappointment.
After pouting like a sore loser, Monokuma continued to speak in his usual tone.
But you guys will be back. And when that time comes, I'll invite you guys to a wonderful place. I found out about this fun island while I was running things here.
Monokuma's laughter filled the room before the static finally cut out and his remains fell silent. He wouldn't be talking again anytime soon. The mastermind was already preparing a new despair to bring to the world and to the students of Hope's Peak Academy, Enoshima included. In the end, the mastermind stayed in her Monokuma persona until the very end, and Enoshima Junko never showed her face again. It was as if she resented the despair Ikusaba had given her. That thought almost filled Ikusaba with despair, but when she heard her classmates calling for her, she sealed that despair deep into the depths of her heart. From now on, she would seal away all her despair, and one day, when she can give Junko the perfect despair, she'll unleash all of that she stored and plunge her sister into a dark abyss. I won't leave my little sister alone. In the end, that was the first hope the disappointing older sister had felt since she was a child. Mukuro, are you really going to go out wearing that wig? After receiving a blood transfusion of the correct blood type, Naegi was beginning to show signs of recovering. Ikusaba, wearing her wig to disguise herself as Enoshima Junko, nodded. If I live as Junko, I might be able to understand her better. Despite that, Ikusaba's voice still sounded like her own, as if she hadn't fully decided. I've made up my mind. While I'm out there, I've decided I'll accept everyone's hatred toward me, and toward Enoshima. I can't die until I've destroyed all of this despair that Enoshima has spread. The damage that ultimate despair inflicted upon the world could not be measured in terms of money, culture, or even human life. Television broadcasts had already begun informing people that Enoshima Junko and Ikusaba Mukuro were the heart of ultimate despair. Among the survivors in the outside world, there are still people who hadn't been detainted by despair yet. Regardless of the fact that she released Naegi and the others, to the survivors, she was nothing more than the reason the world ended. And to the terrorists wearing Monokuma masks who continued to ravage the world, Ikusaba was nothing but a traitor. She was now in the hopeless situation of being enemies with most of humanity. But Ikusaba wasn't making a big deal out of it. I'm going to try not to kill anyone who comes after me for revenge. Wouldn't it be safer to just turn yourself in? Wondered Hagakure. Well, you might just get executed instead, but you can live to be like an old lady if your trial keeps getting pushed back. Ikusaba slowly shook her head at Kagakure. Laws, justice, these things no longer exist. Is it really that bad out there? Maybe we should stay in here. Tagami glared at Hagakure with contempt. Ignorant idiots should just shut up. Your fate won't change whether you stay in here or not. Though he was shocked to learn the Tagami Corporation had been destroyed, Tagami continued to remain firm and proud, even toward Ikusaba. You are a rare asset, continued Tagami, so I will let you live for now. Depending on your actions, I may consider forgiving your crimes after I build a new world. Only a Tagami would boast that they're capable of forgiving the crime of ending the world. You don't need to do that. I don't plan on just surviving. After turning away from Tagami, Ikusaba looked at the other students. Everyone was reacting in their own way. Kirigiri had a look of quiet preparation. Fukawa, having just changed back from Genocide Jack, was panicked and confused. Ikusaba looked back on the 2 years she spent with them, then turned to Naegi, who shared the same memories as her, and gave him the escape button. Naegi, you press it. Huh? Me? I think it's better if you press it instead of me. As she watched Naegi accept the button with some hesitation, Ikusaba thought about what Monokuma had said. You guys will be back! Ikusaba knew that Monokuma told the truth. After all, the file the students needed to fully restore their lost memories remained hidden in the academy. The research notes of Matsuda Yasuke, the ultimate neurologist. His research is the key to restoring everyone's memories. Even if the students no longer have their memories, they may be able to repair the bonds they have built among themselves over the past 2 years. But as long as their memories remained unrestored, the mastermind could still repeat her deadly plan. Although the island mentioned earlier sounded strange, the students could not turn their backs on the despair facing them. Then, let's go. Naegi remembered everything that was happening in the outside world. The boy who had chosen to remain inside the academy 2 years ago now chose to leave. How much did he struggle to come to that decision? But he was determined to face the despair awaiting him outside, and hid his internal conflict from the others. By protecting Naigi's hope, Ikusaba would bring despair to her beloved sister. But she no longer knew the end result of her goal would lead to hope or despair. She pulled the wig over her head and hid her face with her hands. Was she smiling because hope was waiting for her? Or was she crying because her path would lead to despair? When she lowered her hands, her face was devoid of all emotion. Ikusaba no longer knew what expression she would wear on her face. At the same time, Naegi pressed the escape button. A siren began to wail as the turrets retracted into the ceiling. From beyond the heavy door, a bright light appeared. An infinite number of ifs and all the possibilities contained therein encased the world. Accepting everything, hope, despair, and even the feeling of that disappointing girl, Ikusaba Mukuro. and thin. Oh my god, that actually got me a trophy as well! Reading a book gets you a trophy. Okay, fair enough. Well, that was a very interesting read. It was like, the formatting wasn't quite the way I would have liked it. Some of the things I felt were a little bit too much use of adverbs and some of the sentences are in the wrong place. But in general, an entertaining what if idea. What if the two sisters survived and went their own way? I like that, it was good. So yes, that was Danganronpa Storytime, and a very interesting experience, to say the least. A different kind of stream, done in 2 parts. I wasn't expecting it to only take 2 parts, so I'm kind of glad in many ways. It now means that anyone who's missed the first part can catch up in it on its own time. I say any feedback on this is well and truly appreciated, of course, because again, first time I've ever done anything like this before. There is another one that I've unlocked in Ultra Despair Girls, and may potentially do that depending on what everyone thinks of these last 2 streams, because they've been interesting to say the least. But yes, you've already sat through the visual novels of Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc and also Danganronpa Goodbye Despair. You've gone through Ultra Despair Girls. Now, I've also recently finished the anime. That's part of the reason I did this stream. I've actually finished all the animes for this, and I am itching to get a copy of V3. Unfortunately, it's still too expensive. I am going to get a copy. I have to play that game. So that's probably going to be a stream at some point. I'm not going to say when it is. But for now, this has been Storytime. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.